Okay, I just logged out and logged back in, and now it's letting me go through with the privileges, so maybe this time will work. I think a good reset always works out. Okay, and now it's letting me go through with, oh, and it's me on the screen. Someone else talk.
Why wouldn't it let me mute the video?
Do we have a new YouTube link?
We do. I'm sharing it with you right now. I just updated all of our descriptions and everything to match Vault. So I'm going to stick it in the Zoom chat.
Great.
So I'm going to stick it in the Zoom chat.
Great.
I guess we'll have to mute the YouTube. Otherwise, we'll hear audio from two places.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Amazing. So we are live, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Coolio. So shall we kick this off? Amazing. Firstly, I'd like to apologize for the delay. Technical difficulties. We have the most brilliant people, but even technology, it fails us sometimes. But we're here now, so welcome. My name is Rob, also known as DevOps Rob. I'm also joined by Alex and Vishal. So I'll start with Vishal. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Vishal. I'm on the Vault team for a couple of years now. I've seen HashiCorp grow from 13 people to 1,000 people. So I have been here for a while, and the journey has been wonderful so far.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And Alex?
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Alex, also go by Bez. I'm fairly new addition to the Vault core team. I've been on the team for, wow, already 2 months at this point. So yeah, super excited, super eager to learn and to help out and answer any questions that I can.
Amazing. I think you may have started around about the same time as me because I'm about 2 months in as well. So
I didn't know that. I thought you were a veteran.
Nah, maybe in the community, but not at Hashi. Cool. So we're going to talk a bit about Vault today. So to get the conversation started, I'm going to hand over to Vishal, who has prepared a demo of something very special that's coming in the next release of Vault. So I believe it was the release candidate, correct me if I'm wrong, was dropped yesterday. So let's start there. Without any further ado, let's give it to the legend that is Vishal.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. When we started talking about officers and when I started to think about what to talk about and what to introduce, I felt like talking about a feature that is going to be released very soon. Yesterday evening, we released RC for the 1.5 candidate, and one of the features in there is called the resource quotas. I'd like to talk about that, and I'll also show you some of the inner workings of how it works and what it does. Basically, anything we want to do in Vault, we have to go through an API. There are two kinds of adversaries that we generally see. One is external adversaries that would want to bring down Vault, and other kinds of adversaries are legitimate users of Vault using Vault in a not ideal manner. So what I mean by that is certain operations in Vault are heavy, like the token creation or the lease creation, for example, and operators as of today do not have a knob to control how the authenticated users make use of the Vault's API. So if there are best practices around how to use a token when a token is created until its max life TTL is hit, applications are supposed to renew those tokens and reuse them. But the easier way for applications is to just create a new token just because they can. And that can have unintended consequences on the vault server. We have seen many customers report about these sort of issues. And another issue that we have seen is creating millions and millions of leases, and when it's not really supposed to be done. For example, if applications need database credentials, they need to fetch those credentials, and then again, just like tokens, those need to be renewed and reused. But if that's not done, Vault will keep all those leases in memory as long as it's valid for, and this can take a toll on its memory and eventually leads to unintended problems. So as we heard, many of these issues, our product team came up with request for a feature called resource quotas. Now we have a knob that using which we can control some of the things. We have big plans for this feature going forward, but to come up with the basic functionality as part of RC, we have two sets of things. One is rate limiting, and the other one is lease count limiting. We also felt that the rate limiting feature is sort of a table stakes thing for what Vault does, and it was decided that it's going to be open source. So feel free to look up the 1.5 RC announcement from yesterday and download the binary, and feel free to play with the rate limiting thing. I'm going to share my screen and show you how lease quotas on the enterprise works. And it's not very dissimilar to how rate limiting is also configured on the open source. So you can try it on your own, hopefully. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Is the font size all right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yes, very good. Thank you.
I'm going to start a Vault server, which is a local in-memory storage Vault server, which has a predefined root token, and it's a pretty lightweight server we use to test things. As we can see, the seal type is Shamir, it's initialized and it's unsealed, and the root token is already authenticated to the CLI. So we are good to operate now. The first thing I'm going to do is this command here creates a token that has a lifetime of 1 hour. So let me create that token. So we are able to create that token. We can see it. And then next I'm going to use another authentication method called the user pass backend. I created a user called HashiCorp with a password secret, and I try to log in. So if I log in, this will also create another token for us. So we can see that another token has been created. So now that these two tokens are created, now there are leases running in the background for these two tokens. I will create a global quota right now. So the way to do it is there is an API endpoint exposed in sys quotas under the prefix lease count. I'm going to name it as global quota and say that there can only be maximum of 3 leases. This is a very contrived example. There can only be 3 leases present in the whole system right now. So if we read this quota back, we can notice that the previously created 2 leases are already been counted, and the maximum leases can only be 3. So if we try to create another token using this, it allows because the counter had 1 more slot. And if we try to create again, it fails, telling that the quota is exceeded. And it errors with HTTP code 429 too many requests. So this can be used by operators to see how many, there are metrics around this to monitor how many leases are issued, and if there are if there is a need to increase or decrease the quota limits. Let's say in the entire Vault API, there are globally we would want to have a certain number of leases, let's say million leases. But if there is a specific endpoint in a mount that is required to go above that limit, just that endpoint, we can do that as well. For example, for the user pass backend that we created, we would want to create max leases of 5, let's say. So we define the quota for that path alone and say that max leases allowed is 5. Now, if we read this, we can see that since we already created one token for the user pass backend, it has counted 1, and the other counter for the previous quota will be reduced by now. Yeah, we can see that the counter has been has decremented from 3 to 2. This means that we can create one more token in the global using the global quota. So yeah, if we try to create one more, it errors out. Now let's say there is a namespace which needs to go beyond the global quota of 3. We can create a namespace and then try to create a token there. This should fail because the global quota is not allowing it to create any leases. But if I create a quota just for the namespace, we can see that the path here is ns1, which means that all the leases, this quota is applicable for all the endpoints under the namespace 1 prefix. So the counter is 0 here. If we try to create this now, we can create 5 tokens and the 6th one will error out. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that. So a quick question. So at the end of that path there, for example, in that last demo you had ns-quota, is that just like a friendly name just to name your quotas? Or is that a specific endpoint?
Oh, it's a specific endpoint because I created a namespace 2 commands before. Let me share my screen again, sorry. So in this command here, I am creating a namespace by name ns1. And
yes.
all the namespace all the namespaces are used as path prefixes for the API endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, even if it is -ns1 here, internally it will be converted as ns1/ whatever the API this CLI is invoking. So by creating a quota called ns quota and having a path prefix of ns1, all the endpoints that follow this ns1, essentially all the endpoints in this namespace will have this quota applicable to it.
I see. So that where it says ns-quota, that is just a name. So you could have it as namespace-quota.
Yes, ns-quota is just a name, just like how we have global quota is the name. And then this is the user pass quota. And the third one is the ns quota. Yes, you're right.
Okay. Really amazing. Before I continue, I just want to kind of put out a call there. This is a really amazing feature. Thank you very much for demoing that. If you have any questions or you would like to try that out, obviously reach out to us if you have any questions. If you'd like to try it out, I believe the release candidate is available for download. So you can try that in your local development environments, and any feedback will be very useful for us. So thank you in advance for that. Okay, so at the moment you have resource quotas for, you mentioned rate limiting is one of the things that you're looking at, and obviously what you've just demoed to us. What kind of ideas do you have for how far this can go? Because this is a feature that it can be as big as you dream, you know. So what kind of use cases do you have in mind for how you can expand this over the coming months and years?
One of the things, please take whatever I say with a grain of salt, because nothing has been decided. But one of the things we could potentially do is define path-based limiting. For example, how many create operations are allowed on a path, or how many writes can be allowed on a KV store entry. How many times can you list on a particular path is something that would be really useful for many users. Also, we would want to really see what product feels about this feature and how many customers really need this, what are their use cases. Most of the things will be driven by that, but definitely this is something that we can think about.
Amazing. So a question I had was, so a particular use case that I've seen come up quite often is people want to use namespaces, but they want to restrict people's abilities to create nested namespaces. As you can imagine, when you start nesting namespaces, it can get very ugly very quickly. So at the moment, I think people are kind of using policy to try and restrict that, and maybe a bit of Sentinel. But do you think that resource quotas has the ability to potentially limit how many layers of namespaces that one could create, and sort of replace the Sentinel way of kind of restricting it?
I don't foresee this feature replacing it, but I can see some additional use cases that can enhance workflows around the use cases that you're mentioning. I do agree that a lot of people face problems in controlling the nested namespaces. In that regard, I'd like to say that Vault at some point introduced policy templating that has reduced most of the policy creation burdens to a significant degree. And one of the things in the policy templating is that we support a plus in the paths right now, which we didn't support before. Now, having that plus means a lot. Maybe in this use case, that can be used to control the values to be supplied, restricting the amount of namespaces possible.
Okay, just for any listeners that aren't aware of what you mean by plus inside the path, can you just kind of give a high level of what plus gives you in your ability to template your policies?
Yeah. When we have a plus, it acts like a regular expression character, which can be replaced by a full word. Let's say if there are if there is a list of directory names at a specific level, we can say kv/foo/plus/bar. So whatever foo directories had, everybody will have access to all the directories inside foo automatically. Instead of explicitly writing foo/a, foo/b, foo/c, we can say foo/plus, and you have create and read and list or delete permissions on that will give you access to all those directories. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. So with this, does that solely give you the ability to template your policies, or is there other things that kind of make up what policy templating looks like? And it's definitely a challenge that a lot of people will face. And I think people that are newer to Vault probably don't realize they have that problem yet. And as you scale it, you start to realize that creating policies, which is quite a granular task, is quite a burden. So templating is definitely the way to go. So just for people that maybe haven't hit that problem, but they no doubt will hit that problem there, other than the sort of plus sign in the path, are there any other things that kind of enable you to template your policies and roll that out across your Vault estate?
Yes. The primary use case that drove the policy templating is the identity templates, basically. So we have had a number of users complain about the number of identity entries, identity entities that are supposed to be given permission to a specific path, and Vault internally identifies all those entities as a UUID as opposed to a name, and it gets pretty hard for policies to have UUIDs in there, and people had developed their own um, huge components to create vault policies that has UUIDs in them. So now you can say entity slash entity ID and entity slash alias and alias ID can be automated, can be templated using policies, and that will help reduce a lot of policy writing.
Most definitely, most definitely. So this is to me, this is a really exciting feature, just for the fact that I think when you're running things like Vault, these are the kind of issues that you come up against, and just having a way to try and ease that pressure on you is definitely welcome. In terms of the release candidate, that was I keep saying the word dropped like it's a hip hop record, but that was dropped yesterday. What other sort of enhancements or features can people expect if they're going to download that? What else can they test out in that?
There is a lot of features to enumerate. I'd really recommend folks to look at the release email yesterday. But since you asked, I might just be able to look at that email and pick a feature or two that I'm most familiar with to talk about.
Yeah, definitely your favorites as well. And also feel free to send out claps to our lovely engineers, call them out by name if you like, who are responsible for some of this brilliance.
I will choose the features to talk about based on my recent interactions with them. One of the things I'd like to talk about is the integrated storage as the HA storage. Many people might already be aware that Vault now has integrated storage as GA, generally available for use in production. For folks who don't know, integrated storage, it's based of the Raft protocol, and it uses the Vault nodes use Raft protocol to replicate data among the cluster members, and then it does not depend on a third-party storage service, and it's fully self-sufficient. And one of the things Vault also supports is clustering of nodes to be highly available. And when using integrated storage, it comes out of the box that when we use the integrated storage, it is used both for storage and for high availability functionality in Vault. That was sort of a given. But there are users who really want to use storage backends of their choice. And then that storage backend may happen to be not supporting the HA functionality. So as part of 1.5, we enabled Vault to be using a separate storage backend while using the integrated storage just for the HA functionality. That's out there. That is something you might want to try. Another thing I would like to talk about is the seal migration. Vault supports a functionality called auto unseal, which means that instead of providing the Shamir keys to unseal Vault, we can use a cloud KMS key to basically unseal Vault. And there was seal migration essentially means that for folks who are using the Shamir seal to begin with, and if they want to move to a KMS auto unseal, we provided that migration mechanism to move from one seal to another using Vault's configuration file. And then we were at some point, we also supported migration from one KMS seal block to another KMS seal block. And we supported migration from Shamir seals to different KMS seal blocks. What we didn't support for various technical reasons was that moving back from the KMS seal to a Shamir. And some customers had use cases to move back to Shamir for whatever reason they had, and we didn't support that. In 1.5, we are supporting that feature as well. It's a pretty cool thing.
Just on that, we have some questions coming in, but just while you're on the subject, I know there's some customers that are probably listening to this that are very interested in the seal migration. So the last time I dabbled with this, there was a mechanism to conduct seal migration from Shamir to KMS in open source, but that wasn't available for enterprise customers. And I think the sort of reason for that was it got a bit complicated with the way that replication works. Can you sort of elaborate on that? And is there any sort of, dare I say, progress on that front with this release?
Yeah, as far as I understand, the main reason we didn't support that path is because enterprise vault binary does something called as seal wrapping, which is vault's answer for FIPS 140-2 compliance. And that means that some of the storage entries will be double wrapped, and moving the seal from one to another also means that we would have to rewrap all those entries and make it work with the new seal. And it was technically a heavier lift to do, and I think we support that right now.
Amazing.
The only thing that we don't support right now is moving from a KMS seal to another KMS seal of the same type, and that is also on the roadmap to be solved. Look out for that to be available really soon as well.
Definitely. I think that will help a lot of people with some operational burdens that come when it comes to managing Vault clusters. So definitely exciting. With that said, we have a question which I'm going to read out. I'm going to open this up. We haven't heard from Alex yet, so I'm going to open it up to Alex. And if he feels he has anything to add to that, that would be absolutely great. So the question is, do you have any plans for improving metrics like size of secret engine objects? How much secrets are in a secret engine of KV type? We do have more than 100 teams / projects. We would like to know how Vault is used by teams, and we are parsing and analyzing every backup right now as part of this info. So I guess there's sort of many different ways of interpreting that, but I don't know if Alex, if you have any thoughts on that. If you do, please share it with our community.
Yeah, it's a great question. In particular, I know that we recently added limitations around, so Vishal mentioned integrated storage as a secret engine. And we recently introduced limitations around the size of objects that we store in the sequence engine when using integrated storage. In addition to that, we've also exposed metrics for those particular objects. So in some ways, yes, you'll now be able to view and gain insight into the object we're storing using integrated storage. But for other secret engine backends, I'm not aware of any additional metrics or telemetry that we expose to give you insight into that. It's definitely something we should consider, and maybe I'm wrong here, maybe we actually do this, so correct me if I'm wrong, Vishal. But we only do this for integrated storage. As well as the total number of objects in a secrets backend, I think that falls under the same bucket. I do not believe we do that, but we should be able to do so.
Amazing. Vishal, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes. Some of the things that I'd like to say, we have had customers, many customers run into issues with consoles limitation with respect to its object size. Many of the use cases are generally about something being done wrong as part of the application, because Vault is not a data store for storing huge amounts of data. Vault is supposed to store secret data, but there are use cases where genuinely the size of the object gets huge. For example, the number of mounts in the Vault cluster, all the mount information will be compressed into a single storage object, and that can easily hit console storage. So there was no very good answer to solve that, but integrated storage solves much of those problems because it can accommodate more amount of information than console. I don't know what is the limit that we imposed on integrated storage, but I'll be happy to look it up and post in the YouTube later. But for console, it was configurable, but it was 512 KB. But integrated storage should support more.
Yeah, for integrated storage, so as you brought up, Rochelle, without getting like too technical, there's chunking mechanisms when data is replicated using integrated storage. And so I actually didn't bring this up earlier. There is a limit on the size of the objects, and there's a default where it's roughly 3 times the size of that chunking size, which I believe is 512.
Yeah.
But operators have the ability to actually tune that. So if they want to store larger or smaller objects, they have the ability to do so.
I know we said we weren't going to bring up Discuss Post, but it just falls in so nicely with this conversation. So I apologize, Vishal, but there was a post which was asking about potentially storing secure files in Vault. So my guess would be something like a config map that might contain some sensitive data. Would this be the reason why we don't have the ability to store a specific file? Because easily these files can kind of get to sort of very large objects, and you start to hit these issues that Vishal was mentioning with console as your storage backend.
I wouldn't say technical difficulties were the reason to not store files in Vault. We genuinely didn't, at least I haven't come across people who wanted to store files. Maybe that's something product can really do some research into and get back to us, and we can think about if there are valid use cases that we would want to solve. And definitely, as Alex mentioned, by tuning the size of the wrap data store, we might be able to support a decent amount of file sizes, if not GBs of data, certainly MBs maybe.
We also have Vault template as well. So essentially you can have your files templated and it can pull in the more sensitive secrets from Vault as well. So that's one way of doing things as well. I think it's actually the probably recommended way of doing things at the moment, would you say?
Templating, do you mean the Vault agents template? I see.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, Vault agent templates, if we are using agent, Vault agent can be used to pull secrets from Vault and render it into files in console template formats.
Yeah, so I think it partially solves that problem for you anyway. Just on that question there, I just want to sort of send a big shout out to Sam Body who asked that question there. Thank you very much. It's been an interesting discussion point there. So moving on from that, so where do we go from here? So we have some of these amazing functions, and how do you sort of evaluate what the next big thing is for the community out there? Where does the community take sort of the direction of where Vault is going, and how do you interact with that?
That's a big question and sort of a tricky question.
I know.
I wouldn't want to talk about the roadmaps of Vault in general, because I might take a wrong step here and there. But what I can say about is we recently introduced a transform secret engine on the enterprise side. There are some enhancements being planned for that. So keep on the lookout for that. So
I believe Nick Jackson, who's one of our developer advocates, has written a blog article about Transform. So I will tweet the link for that when I finish this. But for those that haven't seen it, and obviously who are quite curious as to what Transform Secrets Engine is, can you give a high-level overview of what that is and the kind of value they can extract from that?
Yeah, I haven't dealt too much with the Transform Secrets Engine, but I can definitely say that we support format preserving encryption as the major functionality in Transform Secret Engine, which uses, I think, FF1-3, I think, the name of the, hold on just a second. Yeah, we support two, we support secure data transformation using for format preserving encryption via FF3-1, and it can also be used for pseudonymous transformation of data through means such as masking of transformation types. And there are more kinds of transformation that we are talking through right now.
Okay, so for any operators that are sort of listening, so I guess developers who are dealing with certain types of data will straight away recognize what the use cases are, but they may not know about Vault, whereas operators, a lot of them will know about Vault, but maybe not be able to map it to use case. So are you able to give sort of a high level use case for why someone would use the Transform Secrets engine? Very high level. I know you said you haven't used it that much, but just anything you can think of that might be helpful to our community operators out there, just to kind of map their own internal use cases to it and explore more.
I was reading the documents and in the design phase for the transform, I read that some of the customers don't like storing hashes in their databases for various reasons. And one of the things the format preserving encryption provides is the length of the data will be equal to the input. Length of the encrypted information will be exactly the same as the input. And that matters for big customers that are like processing tons and tons of data and storing in the databases. If you look at a value, you wouldn't even know whether it is encrypted or not. So that's a use case which can provide some sense of security for various people.
Amazing, amazing. So we have just under 15 minutes left. If you're listening in, you have any questions, we have our Vault engineers actually here, the people that actually build this amazing product. So this is a great chance to actually connect with them. So if you have any questions, please do make sure you post them, and I'll do my very best to answer them there for you. So whilst we don't have any other questions, let's move over to Alex. So you're on the Vault core engineering team, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Rob.
Awesome. So what is new and exciting from Vault core engineering? What can you share with us? What are you allowed to share with us?
Putting me on the spot. What's new and exciting? Yeah, I mean, again, I think the resource quotas feature that we demoed and touched upon earlier is going to be really nice. From what I hear, it's been something that has been requested for quite some time. So I'm really, being that I got to actually help out Vishal on that feature, I'm pretty excited to see how it's going to be used, where operators struggle with it, what they love, what they don't like, how we can improve it, and even touching upon the point that you brought up earlier is how can we expand upon it, right? So, lease counts are pretty primitive, right? It's a counter in terms of how many leases you can generate. But as we start to get into like policies and specific operations, the complexities can increase, but also the use cases, right? So that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to. Another thing that I'm really looking forward to is seeing the integrated storage feature and backend really expand and become production hardened. As far as I know, customers and operators are still learning about it. They're still getting used to it. There are still some missing fundamentals, I guess you can say, that people are used to in console, but they don't have in Vault with regards to integrated storage. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing those features being built out and added to integrated storage, so customers and operators get much more confident and familiar with running that system in that way and not having to rely on a third-party system. Those are the kind of two big things for me, and just continuing to learn and improve Vault.
Amazing. So actually, it brings me to a question. Actually, we were talking about integrated storage, and it's one of these kind of questions where I feel like there's no right or wrong answer for it. It'd be great to gather thoughts from the both of you. But we have practitioners who are looking at the Vault integrated storage, and obviously they're coming from the console sort of background. And the question they keep asking is what is better, right? Now, the way I look at it is there are pros and cons to each. I think there are trade-offs. So if you have console as a backend, it's tried and tested, very battle hardened. You have huge community support out there. But console is a beast, right? So you have this extra layer of complexity that you also have to manage. So with integrated storage, you you have it all integrated, so you don't have to sort of manage all the different things about console that you're not using that are still part of the system. But then the nice thing about having console as backend is you now have your storage backend decoupled from Vault itself, which makes things a lot easier to be immutable. Can you share some of your thoughts as to the trade-offs between the two storage backends?
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with regards to, operational and security burden, right? Like you have to maintain a separate cluster or set of clusters, right? You have to consider all the security implications and scalability aspects and, fault tolerance of the system, right? Obviously one of the big selling points with integrated storage is you reduce that burden, right? You remove that headache. And so I'd say at this point, one of the key differences is feature, completeness and maturity with regards to integrated storage. So once, we get to a point where, say, there's feature parity between integrated storage and what console provides in terms of what operators are used to. So like auto joining, snapshotting, really kind of nice things to be able to back up and snapshot and join and remove nodes at will. Once we get there and have feature parity with console, I think it'll be a much clearer picture of what operators should do. I mean, it's not to say I think console will be removed entirely. There still could be some good use cases for that. It's really around the realm of do you really want to support an additional system and have that DevOps burden.
Amazing. So we have a couple of questions from the community, so I'll get them in while I can. So the first one is, do you have any examples of JWT auth methods? Is there an example role to create?
I'll have to defer this one to Vishal. Unfortunately, I don't know.
I'm not sure if there is one already, but if there isn't, we can definitely add it to the Learn guide. And if I can let the education team know, they will be happy to add one. I recommend going to the Learn website and looking for the JOT authentication method. If there isn't, I'll also do the same after this meeting. And if there isn't, I'll add a request to add one.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I mean, that's something interesting I haven't looked into myself. So if I do uncover the answer to that, I'll see if I can put together a short demo. Just give me time and I'll get that out there for you all to benefit from. We have another one as well. So the question is Minion. I've been watching Despicable Me. Start again. Minimum PKCS 11 functions exposed by HSM. Please take a look at my question. So let's just have a quick look at the discuss forum. So the question is there a specification of the minimal functionality that a HSM must implement and expose via PKCS 11 interface? For example, is provider library for until, unwrap, or vault, plus other operations that Vault is able to use with a HSM eventually. There's more to the question than that, but let's keep it high level at the moment and we can kind of delve into the detail there. So Vishal, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's hard to answer without knowing, without looking into it technically at a more relaxed manner and a deep way. But what I can say is we used soft HSM to test it out. And I'd be happy to look at that soft HSM link and provide it. That way, the functionality of the soft HSM can be compared against the HSM which the user was trying to use and compare what's missing.
I think the way I interpret the question is I think they're looking at maybe using a HSM with Vault, and they're probably trying to make sure they get one that's compatible with some of the operations they want to run with Vault. So I guess the real question is, what's the minimum requirement for a HSM? Do we even have that documented, or do we know what that is? Or is that something we still have to look into and publish?
Yeah, maybe I'll have to look into that.
Okay. All right, no worries. So what I'll do, I'll make a personal pledge there. So when I get the answer for that, I will respond to your Discuss post. The user for that is HB9CWP. So thank you very much for posting that. I will respond to that on there with that, and I'll also tweet your responses for that as well. So that's amazing. We have 5 minutes left. Is there anything else you would like to talk to the community about? Is there anything you want to share? Let's open to both Vishal and Alex.
I'd like to say something before I forget about it. When you asked what's new with Alex and what he was doing, he was humble enough not to mention that in the resource quotas, the whatever open source users are getting, the rate limit quotas is implemented by him. And enjoyed, thanks to him, kudos to him. And he has been a great help. Just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, appreciate that. Super excited, as I mentioned earlier, to see people use this feature, right? I mean, I think that's kind of like the big reward here is seeing usage of this feature and getting feedback from the community in terms of how we can make it better, how they're using it. So I think that's pretty rewarding.
Yep. Please kindly go ahead and test this feature out and test all the features that are in the RC, because there is still a couple of days for the GA, and in this time we'll be looking for issues and fix as many as they come. In the meanwhile, maybe Alex, do you want to just mention how the rate limit quotas work for people to just get started?
Yeah,
with it?
good question. Yeah, we have a few minutes left. So rate limiting, right? So as Vishal mentioned, essentially everything involved operates through the API, right? So, you know, if you're not careful, I think you can easily get into a situation where you're really starting to unintentionally, you know, DOS or put unnecessary burden on either specific nodes in the cluster or even the entire cluster itself. And you may not necessarily notice this immediately unless you're actually looking at, you know, the actual system resource utilization, right? So we kind of presume that operators aren't being intentionally malicious, but even in case they are, we want to have the ability for the system to be able to handle those kinds of situations. So what operators can do is they can create rate limit quotas. With the rate limit quota, just like a least count quota for enterprise, you can specify a path, right? And you can also specify a limit and a burst value. So essentially what this allows you to do is at any given moment, you can consume burst number of requests, and that rate limit is refilled at a given rate per second. So for example, you could have a burst value of let's say 3,000 and a rate of 1,000. That means you can consume 3,000 API requests immediately, and after which it's refilled at a rate of 1,000 per second. And again, operators we have certain metrics exposed that operators can gain insight into in terms of, is this too much? Is this too little? How it's being used, and kind of tweak those accordingly. And so, yeah, it's kind of just a high level insight into how rate limiting works. It's just a simple token bucket based rate limiting.
Amazing. We have a couple of minutes left. I just want to quickly highlight something. So for the release candidate that's dropped yesterday, where are we tracking issues and any bugs that people may find? Just want to make sure they're not sort of raising issues in the wrong places, just so that we can ensure that we get sort of sight of them before it goes GA.
Mm-hmm. Two things. If they have questions, it has to go on the mailing list on the Discuss forum. If they have bugs, it has to go on the GitHub issue tracker.
Okay, so just raise the issue and it will be picked up for this. Okay, amazing. Okay, so with the last minute, let's get a final word from you, Vishal. Is there anything you want to say before? Any parting words?
It's pretty nice to see Vault grow from Vault team grow from handful of engineers to a bunch of full-fledged, well-oiled engine, and it's running and growing faster than I have ever seen before, and it's a lot stable. We are very excited to build more things for the users. Just happy to be here and build cool things.
Amazing. We're glad to have you. Alex, any final parting words from you?
No, I mean, just super excited to join the team, to start helping contribute and continuing to learn how this, awesome piece of software works. And yeah, kind of really making certain aspects of Vault production, ready, production hardened. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure hosting you. I do hope that to all the community out there that were listening, you got a lot of value from this conversation here. I personally have learned quite a bit myself, and I'm really excited to see some of the things that are coming in 1.5. Do make sure that you are downloading that and trying it. Do make sure you raise any issues that you come across. And I think Vishal mentioned that there's a mail out with some of the features that are in the release candidate. So definitely be sure to look that up. I will find the links for that and I will tweet it a little later on. So don't forget to follow me on Twitter. That's DevOps_Rob. And with that, I am going to close community office hours for this week. And thank you very much, lovely community, for joining us.
Thank you all.
Big waves, everyone.